representing his home Alabama Crimson Tide, Roll Tide, and Troy Brestel representing generic Nike Swoosh, Just Do It.
Yeah, I realize, you know, 4 8-man tournaments on Magic Online is not the same, but it's still a lot of Magic.
Have you ever played in a have there been 12 round Moto like PTQs? How long do those last?
You know, I have not played all the way through, if there ever was one that long. The Magic Online PTQ, it just, for me, it lacks that fun of all of the hustle and bustle of people. Just before this round began, Brad Nelson came over to me and he said, Adrian, and he told me a story that was too long to share now, but that's the kind of thing that you get to do when you're playing at a live tournament. You know, there's going to be 1,000+ people here. It's exciting. You know, I saw a young guy, one of the tournament organizer's sons, he's 12 years old, Will Hockman, playing, and he's pumped to be playing at a 1,000-player event.
This is Alan Hockman's son?
Yeah,
From
Pastimes.
Pastimes.
Yeah.
Runs a lot of GPs and other tournaments all across the Midwest here.
But
Well,
here in front of us, we have the beginning of this match. Todd Anderson, Troy Brestel, and you can be sure that after this game is over, after this match is over, these players are probably going to be telling their friends about it. And what do we have? We get Gataxian Probe to start things out with a Lightning Bolt, Force of Will, Ponder, Gataxian Probe, Stifle, Forked Bolt, and a Misty Rainforest revealed. Ponder is a good option here, as is Force of Will.
So perhaps a bit of a risky keep by Troy Brestel, and Todd Anderson doing that, seeing that hand is just going to be salivating now.
Yeah, now Ponder and Force of Will in his hand, Todd was able to see those cards. Those are cards that should Todd be able to remember, he's got it probably written down, the Ponder can get him to something new and fresh, and that Force of Will is going to stop that first attempt at reanimation. And Todd's list does not have any cards like Cabal Therapy or Duress. He has Daze and Force of Will to protect his combo.
So we saw Todd Anderson not play a land on turn 1 there. That is obviously on purpose. The Reanimator deck, sometimes its strategy is, as you can see from this hand, to just get up to 8 cards, discard a monster into the graveyard, and then cast a reanimation spell next turn. So Todd was going for that turn 3 reanimation off of a turn 2 natural discard with Elish Norn and Gristlebrand in his hand.
Yeah, that Force of Will in Troy Brestel's hand is going to have to slow Todd down a little bit from that plan.
And now both players have complete information. I guess Todd Anderson doesn't have complete information. He's missing a few draw steps now. Draw step and a Gataxian Probe draw.
Which looks like has added a Wasteland to Troy Brestel's hand.
Troy is going to sacrifice his Misty Rainforest and probably go for a Ponder.
Yeah, that Ponder is in his hand. Remember, Force of Will, Stifle, Forked Bolt amongst some of the rest of those cards. He has used the Gataxian Probe already.
Oh, he's found a Nimble Mongoose.
That's a very good pull for him right now.
So a bit of aggression, and there you go. Todd Anderson draws his card for the turn and immediately pitches Gristlebrand at the end of his turn in his cleanup step. So he's going to go for that reanimate. We know about the Force of Will. Yeah, Todd knows about the Force of Will in Troy's hand. So it's likely going to get countered unless Todd can fight his way over the top, which he will. Well, we saw Todd's hand as well.
He had 1 Daze as a means to fight through the counter magic, which is not very much given that Troy knows that it's there and that Troy has Force of Will.
Okay, so we have a little pause in the action here. Apparently Troy Brestel cast Ponder, took the 3 cards and touched them with his hand, mistaking it for Brainstorm, putting the cards together. That is a very tough position. I did not see the exact sequence of actions, but one very real possibility here is that Troy Brestel may get a game loss for drawing extra cards because those cards touched his hand. Technically, that's counting as a card draw.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that is very important when you're playing in a high-profile pressure tournament, you know, you have to make sure that you do everything in the up and up, so to speak. And it did not look to me like he was attempting to do anything there.
No, no.
But it doesn't particularly matter. If I've got my cards and I bring them right to my hand, it can be sometimes hard to tell which ones are which, and so rather than have it be where judges are trying to determine intent and trying to be like, well, I don't think you meant to, and we can probably figure out which cards it is, right? Rather than going down that rabbit hole, just the idea of taking a card and putting it with your hand is considered a draw.
Yeah, I mean, sleight of hand, not the magic card, but actual sleight of hand is a possibility. We're not saying that that is the case here, but because that is such a real possibility, and it could be very easy to switch out cards. Anytime you're manipulating your library for like a ponder effect or scry, and you do this and they touch, that's considered a card draw. So we're going to see what happens here.
Yeah.
Again, I unfortunately did not see the exact actions that occurred, but the spotter at the table caught it, or perhaps the player himself or Todd mentioned it really quickly. We'll see if the player mentioned it himself. It's possible.
I have a question for you.
Yeah,
okay,
go
so
ahead,
let's
Adrian.
pretend, so you do judging.
I do.
And one of the things I wonder then, so let's pretend that you are a table judge at a particular game, and you're behind the player, so you can actually tell what card they drew. Does that change your penalty that you would assign if you can actually see which card was put into somebody's hand by accident?
It does not.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. So we are then, it looks like they're going to game number 2.
Yeah, it appears that the game loss was issued. It's possible that there was an appeal to the head judge and they had to go away from the table real quick, but we're shuffling up for game number 2. Very unfortunate for Troy Brestel. Pondering, mistook it for Brainstorm. I mean, this happens a lot. I was at a Legacy Open once. The head judge actually made this announcement, be careful with your ponders and brainstorms. And I think even Preordain was seeing a little bit more play in Legacy at the time. And he said, make sure you know what spell you're casting before you cast it. And at that tournament, for some reason, it happened much more frequently, unfortunately. Maybe he put that into their minds and people were pondering as brainstorm and brainstorming as ponder. Yeah, very unfortunate sequence of events for Troy there.
Yeah.
A lot better if you mess him up the other way.
Yeah.
If you cast brainstorm and think it's ponder, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, at that
you're
point,
putting the 3 cards back.
yeah, at that point you're actually not hurting yourself so much.
Yeah.
In one of my favorite brainstorms that I did in a sanctioned tournament, this was at a Grand Prix, I cast brainstorm and put all 3 cards back.
That's not a very good brainstorm.
No, it's not.
That's a different spell.
Yeah, but you know, one of the things that happens sometimes when you're playing in a tournament, it's been a long weekend, it's been a long day, it's very easy to actually just get a small gaffe or other such thing, and it doesn't mean anyone's doing something malicious, but what it can mean is that just it's easy enough to have a small mistake happen. So
especially these 2 cards, they are so similar, and so often they see play next to each other. You're used to doing one, then the other, and the sequence may change. So we're going to move on. We're going to see if Troy can recover from this. You see him taking off his baseball cap there, thinking about that mistake perhaps, or thinking about what he needs to do for game 2. And what does he need to do for game 2? They are sideboarding because they did get to see some of each other's decks. And certainly Troy knows he's up against Reanimator. Todd revealed his hand. There's a Reanimate and some monsters.
Well,
does he have anything?
One of the first things that sticks out, obviously, is Tormod's Crypt.
Ah, of course.
And Tormod's Crypt, obviously a great weapon against reanimation-style strategies, but he's also fighting against counterspells from his opponent, so I would expect to see Flusterstorm and Pyroblast be considered. Now, Flusterstorm does not deal with a card like, say, Animate Dead, but it does with a card like Reanimate or Exhume.
So Todd Anderson starts off, cracks a Bloodstained Mire for Underground C, and then casts into him and says, hey, give me that back. We'll just shortcut here and put a Gristlebrand in the graveyard.
Okay, so now the game is much more dangerous. Last time it took him until turn 2 to have a creature in the graveyard, and he did it the old-fashioned way by discarding it.
Sure did. And Tomb, a much better card, previously banned in Legacy, and then it was unbanned. And Reanimator, while for a time it was possibly the best deck, especially after Gristlebrand was printed, just a player, a regular player. And now we'll see what's going on here. Troy casts Gitaxian Probe, Brainstorm, Lightning Bolt, Ponder, Force of Will, and a Scalding Tarn. So Todd does not yet have the reanimation.
He's pretty far along the way with so much library manipulation and a creature already in the yard. Troy is in some danger right now. And should that Gristlebrand come into play, that is so dangerous.
And you saw that Lightning Bolt in Todd Anderson's hand. This is because he is playing kind of a new twist on Reanimator. He's splashing for red. He has that Lightning Bolt. He has Young Pyromancer in his deck, and that is the namesake of the deck here, Young Frankenstein, the classic comedy movie.
Now, one of the things that he can do in this deck is he can actually switch gears. This is much like we would sometimes see with Reanimator decks, where they would switch gears and become a show and tell. Well, I was going to say the other Reanimator decks could become a show and tell deck,
sure.
Right? Well, and that's usually out of the sideboard to get around graveyard hate. Todd's deck has these Young Pyromancers so that he can just have a Pyromancer in play and start attacking.
Yeah, very good point. These Reanimator decks often very vulnerable to graveyard hate. You mentioned the Tormod's Crypt. A lot of other players will bring in something like Relic of Progenitus. If you have access to white mana, Rest in Peace. And so Todd Anderson can just go around those hate cards and attack with an army of 1/1 elemental tokens. Not the greatest, but if your opponent's not ready for that plan and they overload on the graveyard hate, they may be very vulnerable to a random assortment of creatures like that.
It's very, very easy to hate out a reanimation strategy, and the Young Pyromancer definitely gets around that should you be playing against somebody who is attempting to really hate out your reanimation strategy. Now we see a Ponder here, appropriately done by Troy Brestel. The game did not end suddenly. Main phase Brainstorm.
So Todd's going to go for it. He's going to try to find a reanimate right here and get that Gristlebrand into play. He's got Force of Will backup. He's got Daze backup.
It could end right here.
It could end, and Troy realizes that he's seen his hand. He's going to go for the Force of Will on the Brainstorm, rather than give Todd an opportunity to dig.
And Todd dazes that Force of Will.
Well, even if that resolves, it's not over. Todd still needs to find something. Although with that Scalding Tarn, it gives him a few extra opportunities even after casting this Brainstorm. So he looks, Brainstorm.
Does not find it.
Volcanic Island.
Oh, there's a little bit of an earthquake, and Todd recovers. His hand now, Brainstorm, Daze, Force of Will, Lightning Bolt, land. Putting back, it looks like Lightning Bolt and a land. He puts back the land that he dazed up.
Okay, now he's going to fetch with the Scalding Tarn. Resets the library. Gets an Underground C. Gonna keep looking. Looking for something good. No, does not tap. He has the Brainstorm, but even if he were to cast it, he's already played his land for the turn. So no action this turn for Todd Anderson.
2 land, Tarmogoyf.
That's going to be a big Tarmogoyf. So
Daze, mana in pool with a Daze. Tarmogoyf goes away. Mana, Brainstorm. Now, without a fetch land in play, this is going to mean that the Brainstorm, as far as Brainstorms go, is going to be a little less effective than the best Brainstorm moments. But Todd right now, he's not trying to make the best Brainstorm. He's trying to find something now.
He's just looking for Reanimate or an Exhume.
And he wants it immediately. So rather than try to sculpt the best hand, he's trying to sculpt the hand for the next turn. He's got a fetch land. He can shuffle away, one of those cards because he put 2 back, then draws a card. So there's one of the cards gets shuffled away. But again, Todd was concerned more about time rather than concerned about making his Brainstorm the most effective possible Brainstorm. Let's check your hand out, Troy Brestel.
Yeah, let us check this hand out. Ponder, Brainstorm, and 2 Force of Wills.
That's pretty good.
That's about the best hand he could have right here. I mean, he would like to have a threat. He tried to play a Tarmogoyf, and it was countered by Daze.
I think the best card that Troy could draw right now is a 1 casting cost creature.
Yeah, Nimble Mongoose or Delver Secrets. He's going to Ponder to look for that. Leaving the tropical island up in case he does find the Nimble Mongoose. And he's up to 5. It would be 6 cards in his graveyard with the Ponder. Very close to threshold. And it looks like he has found a Nimble Mongoose there in the top 3. He's going to look at his hand again, keeping them separate. So it is Nimble Mongoose. Looks like also a Delver Secrets.
Lays the goose.
And that is certainly going to be a 3/3 Shroud when it is ready to attack next turn.
His hand currently Force of Will, Brainstorm, and something.
And probably another blue card he would have kept.
There's the Force of Will, Brainstorm. We know that Todd has a Force of Will.
Todd lets us go. He knows that Troy has another Force of Will.
Attack, and that does appear to be just barely threshold.
7 cards in Troy's library. Wow.
Let's try again. Spell Pierce, how about that?
Did he really just back-to-back off the top reanimation spells? Todd Anderson running good, backs it up with Force of Will, and Troy is going to be forced to use his Force of Will. There you go.
Goodbye, Brainstorm. I believe Troy's hand is now completely empty.
Yes.
Todd Anderson, 2 cards left in hand. A Brainstorm and a Lightning Bolt.
So, Lightning Bolt not great here, does not interact with the Nimble Mongoose. Does interact with the Delver Secrets, and at 9 life, that's going to be important. Todd needs a little bit more time here. He's going to...
Now, if he Brainstorms into Reanimate, for example, and he would drop down a huge amount of life. He has, what, Gristlebrand as a target? I don't think he has an Elshnorn in the grave.
So this is a tough spot for Todd. Yeah, you see him cast Brainstorm there off of his Underground Sea. He was thinking about whether he wanted to tap his Volcanic Island, but as a hedge, he needs to leave that Volcanic Island up to deal with the Delver Secrets. So now he needed to find a reanimation spell and a black mana source, which he did.
He shuffles away the Lightning Bolts, shuffles away the Force of Will, and he's going to be able to cast Exhume here.
Wow, so really from an empty position, not an empty hand, but an empty position, no reanimation effects, he went Reanimate, Exhume, and now Brainstorm into Exhume.
And Troy Brestel does have a Tarmogoyf in his own graveyard.
All right. Well, we'll find out how big that Tarmogoyf is. Delver of Secrets.
Flip.
Is this enough? How big is that Tarmogoyf?
Tarmogoyf's pretty big. I see instant sorcery land, but I don't think I see anything else right now.
No matter what, it's not really going to be enough because the lifelink now, very importantly, no longer a triggered ability, happens as damage is dealt. So Todd's going to gain that 7 life, go up to 15, and then certainly not going to take 15 here. 6 damage plus only 3, like you said.
And that Tarmogoyf died just barely off screen. We'll bring that down. There we go. We see another. Oh, he's thinking about something here. Now, if he has a lightning bolt in his hand, he actually can make a really nice play of, say, blocking with the insectile aberration.
Yeah.
If he gets a lightning bolt and then shooting it, okay, and he sees that there's a bolt in Todd's hand, which actually can mean that Todd can clear the way entirely.
Right, so Griselbrand needs to deal damage to gain life from the lifelink. You're saying if Troy blocks and then removes his blocker before damage is dealt, then no life is gained.
And we see Troy drop a young Pyromancer of his own into play. Entomb and Lightning Bolts. In comes Griselbrand in the air. And that's going to gain Todd a ton of life. He's up to 15 now. And this is a really difficult position now for Troy Brestel. Troy can attack for 8, but that's still just
not enough.
Treading water.
Yeah. And Todd Anderson choosing not to draw 7 cards. Tarmogoyf does move up because the Delver of Secrets died. Because of the Exhume, the graveyards were emptied of creatures at one point. That young Pyromancer, a singleton in Troy's sideboard, and there you see he's going to pack it up to the Griselbrand, the big flying demon